Welcome everyone to a very special event. You guys have seen me play New Campaign Trail. I'll put a link in the description to some of the other playthroughs that I've done on this, but this is something entirely new. First of all, I get to announce that this is now live. They're going to make this new mod live from the moment of the release of this video. So I want to thank the developers who reached out to me and offered me this opportunity to be the very first person outside their development team to get to play this mod. It's for 1864. And like I said, it is now live. So if you're watching this video, that means you can play this mod. And I'll put the link in the description to the video so that you can play it, or to the game so you can play it for yourself. This one, unlike most of them, this one is 50 questions long. It's super in-depth. Right now, you can only play as Lincoln and Johnson, which was the historical 1864 Republican ticket. And the developers have given me a challenge. They want me to play this as historically as possible. So I'm going to be answering these 50 questions how I think Lincoln would have answered them in 1864. We're going to try to play this as closely to the real events as possible. Now, granted, even though I feel like I know a lot, I may not get these exactly as they intended, but I'm going to try to do my best to answer the way Abraham Lincoln would have answered in this mod. So I'm excited to dive into this one. Join me on the journey. And if you want to see more like this, just let me know in the comment section below. Let's use this as an opportunity to talk about the real history of what was happening in 1864. So here we go. Give them hell, Uncle Billy, it says. We are going to be choosing the 1864 election. And so let's read the background of what's happening here. So first of all, we need to understand Abraham Lincoln switches running mates. His vice president for his first term was Hannibal Hamlin from Maine. But now Lincoln is trying to reach across party lines. So he puts a Southern Democrat on the ticket with him in 1864. Andrew Johnson was one of the few Southern Democrats from a state that seceded in 1861 who stays loyal to the Union. He's a senator from Greenville, Tennessee, and he's the military governor of Tennessee. East Tennessee was largely pro-Union and stayed pretty loyal during the American Civil War. So at the onset of 1864, the war to preserve the Union rages on. Abraham Lincoln's controversial approach to fighting the secessionist South has resulted in a few major victories, but despite this, his command remains in question. The Democrats rally around two figures: New York Governor Horatio Seymour, who saw the state through the massive riots that ensued after the passing of Lincoln's draft, and George B. McClellan, the former commander of Union forces whom Lincoln dismissed. Many Republicans have become wary as well, viewing Lincoln as a vacillating and passive leader in the war. So Lincoln must show his Republican peers that he has the wherewithal to win the war decisively and assure war Democrats. These are the Democrats. The Democrats are split, right? There are some Democrats who want peace at all costs with the South. Let them go if you have to. But there are others, like McClellan, who will be considered a war Democrat, someone who says, at least out loud, that he wants to win the war. But he is also willing to negotiate a peace with the South, whereas Lincoln wants to defeat the South, and at this point he also wants emancipation and a 13th Amendment, which the war Democrats do not. And moderates that he will not be too radical in the integration of recently freed blacks into society and completely destroy the South's ability to recover after the war. McClellan must thread the needle between the peace Democrats who dominated his party's convention, wishing to end the war with a negotiated armistice, and his own impulses to win the war and redeem what he felt was Lincoln's mishandling of both his own career and the war as a whole. So our candidate will be Abraham Lincoln. And our running mate will be Andrew Johnson. You can see there are other options, but they've told me that so far only Andrew Johnson and Abraham Lincoln are coded so far for the game. So Schuyler Colfax was the Speaker of the House at that time. Hannibal Hamlin is Lincoln's existing vice president. Benjamin Butler is another war Democrat that he could put on the ticket. And then there's Daniel Dickinson as well, who is a Democrat. So we are going to go with Andrew Johnson from Tennessee. We are going to go with the normal difficulty level. You can go very easy all the way up to disaster. We'll go with normal in this one. And here we go. Okay, so question number one, it's November 1863. So this is when he gives the Gettysburg Address. For 3 summers, a civil war has engulfed the country, and almost 500,000 souls have been lost. You've been invited to speak at the memorial on a site of one of the Union's precious few major victories at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. What kind of speech will you give? Now remember, they've asked me to try and toe the historic line as much as I can. So an ode to the dead. It should be brief, concise, and true. My speech will be done in honor and justness of our cause. We stand at a crossroads of history, and we should act as though we are aware of that. Remind them of why they voted me in the first place. Give a speech of no less than 50 stanzas. So I feel like either one of these could be the right one, but I feel like an ode to the dead, it should be brief, concise, and true. Is most accurate when describing the Gettysburg Address. So, true to form, you speak for all of 5 minutes and deliver a speech destined for the history books. The crowd loved it, especially after withstanding Edward Everett's preceding 2-hour oration. Edward Everett was actually one of the people who challenged Lincoln for the Republican nomination. I think he may have even been the vice presidential nominee previous to this. But anyway, considered one of the great speakers of his time, and did give a 2-hour speech that he writes a very nice note to Lincoln afterwards telling him, I should be, it would be great if I had been able to come in 2 hours as near to the point of why we were there as you were able to do in just a few minutes. So the war still rages close to Washington, but winter has begun to affect the troops. Your commanding general, Henry Halleck, has submitted a plan to cease campaigning in Virginia for a few months, to build defensive fortifications throughout the region, and hopefully avoid an offensive campaign from Robert E. Lee. Your Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, another Democrat, has asked you to reprimand Halleck, citing this as one of many examples of Halleck's reticence to actually fight the war. So Halleck is no McClellan. We should be cautious not to reprimand him too strongly. Lincoln was not somebody who wanted to be cautious. He was constantly pushing his generals, go, go, go. And I think sometimes that actually was to the detriment of the war effort. So Halleck, here's the thing though, Halleck was not the general in the field. He was the chief of staff in Washington, and he actually keeps that job after Grant is made the general in chief. Yeah, we need to push against Lee. He does indeed move on Lee, greenlighting George Gordon Meade's mine run campaign, which was historically what happened. The movement becomes a complete false start as Lee easily outmaneuvers the Army of the Potomac, and Meade retreats further north from whence the campaign started. So that's historically what we had happen. The New York Tribune, Horace Greeley's radical Republican paper, holds great sway over the national discourse. While initially greatly supportive of your wartime agenda, the length and severity of the war is taking a real toll. He's been openly and vigorously rebuking you and your administration for perceived indecisiveness and weakness over the past months. Do you have any plans to fight back against Greeley's machine? I don't know exactly how I would answer this to be historically. Reach out to him personally, I believe, is what Lincoln did. Are we not still all Republicans? We should reach out to him personally, see if he will rethink his condemnations in exchange for assurances on abolition. I feel like that's what Lincoln did historically. In a telegram, Greeley loudly accuses you of attempting to influence the journalistic integrity of his paper. Now the headline is that you are desperate for good press. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. All right, so here's what the map looks like at this point. Let's look at the electoral vote estimate. McClellan ahead right now. You can see him winning all of these big states. Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. Obviously, these are states that we're going to need to have. I doubt we're going to win Kentucky regardless of what we do. So, news from Tennessee, and this is what's going to really affect a lot of this. I'm not going to worry too much right now about this campaign map, because what's really going to sway the campaign map is going to be what happens in the war. Taking Atlanta, taking Sherman going on his march to the sea, things like that. Great news from Tennessee. After the disaster at Chickamauga, Confederate General Braxton Bragg was finally defeated. Ulysses S. Grant, commander of your forces in the West, has moved into the Appalachians, resulting in massive victories in Chattanooga and Knoxville. Tennessee has been recaptured. Will you attempt to reinstate statehood? Yeah, I think they kind of did that under military law and condition that the populace must take an oath of loyalty in order to regain a citizen's privileges. Set an example here. I think that's what they did. Unionists of Eastern Tennessee are delighted and will surely carry the state for you this year. Radical Republicans are encouraged by your firm hand on this matter, while Democrats decry your loyalty oath as an act of tyranny. How did that affect things? Well, now Tennessee is firmly in the Lincoln column, and so that helps a lot. In Louisiana, also, same thing. Remember, Lincoln never viewed these states as having left the Union. He always saw this as people within those states who were personally rebelling, not the states themselves. On the eve of 1864, the Ohio Republican James Ashley, if you've seen the movie Lincoln, he's very prominent in that. Same guy that plays Gail Bedecker in Breaking Bad, has submitted a proposal to end slavery throughout the country. This is the 13th Amendment, including in the slave states that remained in the Union. Will you use your office to endorse this proposal? So Lincoln did support it, but he wasn't a radical Republican. So I feel like moving behind the scenes without making the border states nervous is probably the way he wants to go. So I feel like this is probably the most accurate way to go with Lincoln, but it is much like you to choose the road of patience and caution that will receive much grief from the radicals. Your work to twist the arms of potential opponents begins here, and with luck will bear fruit in the end. As the new year begins, many Republicans have shown dissatisfaction at your administration's handling of the war. You have heard the behind the scenes. Your own Secretary of the Treasury, Salmon P. Chase, Ohio man, definitely felt like he could have done a better job than Lincoln, has begun making moves to replace you on the Republican ticket in the upcoming election. So what Lincoln ends up doing is he makes Chase the Chief Justice of the United States. So bring him closer into the fold. We should reduce his role. Never forgave me for taking the nomination 4 years ago. I think I'll go with that one. With a challenge from the radicals looking ever more likely, your overtures to Chase do not go unnoticed. He ceases his incessant threats of resignation, which should give you some breathing room. Good news comes from the Democratic camp. Their own convention seems as divided as yours. The Democrats are split between the Copperhead Peace Democrats. And some of these Copperheads, the leader of them was a guy named Clement Vallandigham, who was from Ohio, like a lot of these folks were, who ended up being deported out of the country, who wanted peace at all costs and were willing to let the Confederates have their own country. And War Democrats desiring to win decisively and rebuild the Union by force. Will you do anything to reach out to these War Democrats? Well, yeah, I put Andrew Johnson on the ticket. Focus on the war effort. The Democrats will come. I think that's what we'll do. This line of thinking relies on simple assumptions, but maybe that's not so bad. It's certainly true that every Union victory sees a growth in enthusiasm for your candidacy. So here's where we're at right now. Again, nothing's going to really change until Sherman takes Atlanta, and then that's when we're going to see the big shift, I'm sure. John C. Fremont, who was the 1856 Republican candidate, their very first candidate for president, Mexican war hero and your former commander of forces in Missouri. Yeah, he acted like he was a dictator in Missouri and just started doing whatever he wanted, which is why he's the former commander. Has officially given a letter of resignation from the military and has written a scathing editorial discussing your working relationship in the New York Tribune. How will you respond? I think we'll just ignore it. Yeah, we won't give him the time of day. Fremont may be nothing more than sour grapes, but there is concern that the radical Republicans, dissatisfied with your hesitance, may rally around him. Okay. There have been calls for George B. McClellan, the former general-in-chief, whom you replaced after failing to pursue Lee after Antietam, to be returned to his former position. He is visiting Washington from Trenton. Do you wish to speak to him? Even when he was general-in-chief, he would avoid Lincoln like crazy. So, no. He likely wishes to see me as little as I wish to see him. There's no need to pretend otherwise. He steers clear of you, and that's that. The newspapers make much of the apparent animus between the two of you, but avoiding him may have been best for your health. Grant, hero of Chattanooga and the man who took Vicksburg and cut the Confederacy in half, has arrived in Washington, leaving William Tecumseh Sherman in command of the Western Theater. Grant's arrival is met with much speculation. Halleck has come to you asking if Grant is to replace him. So this is what happens historically. Halleck has served admirably and capably, not really in the field, but he is a good desk guy. They called him Old Brains for a reason. So keep him on as Grant's chief of staff, which is what happened historically. So we'll do that. Halleck takes the demotion with dignity. He was married, by the way, to Alexander Hamilton's granddaughter, and admits that he had planned to offer this shift in position himself if the occasion were to arise. The two men seem to complement each other's skills well. Absolutely true, and Grant went out into the field with the Army of the Potomac, so it wasn't like both of them were in Washington clashing and things like that. So the promotion of Grant to lieutenant general and commander of the armies, a position not officially used since Washington's command, has caused a stir. While Grant has got quite a good bit of press from his recent victories in the West, the bloody stalemate at Shiloh, which at this point has been like almost 2 years, still looms large in memory. And it wasn't really a stalemate. I mean, it was a bloody victory, but it was a strategic victory for the Union. There are rumors of Grant's fondness for drink. Do you wish to make any attempt to dispel these worries? Well, I know Lincoln said he basically asked what kind of whiskey Grant drank so he could give it to his other generals. We'll see if that's a choice here. And Grant probably was not an alcoholic. He was a binge drinker who couldn't hold his liquor, I think is a more accurate way of describing it. He's promised me he's been temperate in the field. And most of the time, the stuff you heard said negatively about Grant was coming from his opponents. Ignore these rumors. We promoted Grant to get the job done, not to look good in the papers. He is a good man and a better commander. We'll go with that. A private vow does little to convince his opponents, and things are made all the messier when Henry Halleck himself admits to you that he began those rumors while serving over Grant in Tennessee. All right, so maybe that wasn't the best one. Again, we got a long way to go, and the real change is going to happen with all of this when things happen in the war. The Senate has successfully voted in favor of a constitutional amendment, so now we're at the end of January, early February 65. So actually, we should be after Atlanta, so maybe these are a little out of order, but that's okay. The 13th Amendment has a longer road to travel in the far more divided House. Oh, okay. So the Senate passed it. That's my own mistake there. The Senate passes it in 64. It's the House where there's the big fight in January of 65. Will you push for a vote anyway? Yes. But how do we say yes? Clearly want the amendment to pass, but the war is our top priority. Meanwhile, we'll ensure the support for our amendment will feature front and center at the party convention. Let Colfax lean on Congress. I think we're going to just say yes here. While the vote fails, your caucus appreciates your steadfast support of the bill. This may ease radical split from your party. So I think what's happening here, let me back up again because I'm getting a little ahead of myself. There was a vote in 64 when the Senate passed it, and it did fail. But then the Republicans win massive majorities in the election in November 64. So in 65, while they're waiting for the new Congress to take effect, they know that they're going to be able to easily pass it, but Lincoln wants to get it passed with the old Congress, the same people who voted it down a few months earlier. So that, I think, what we just dealt with was the first time when it got voted down. The recruitment of black men into the military begun last year has been controversial, and many of your detractors have claimed this is a sign you plan to give complete equal rights to blacks brought into the country. Do you have any wish to assuage these fears? Now, this was a really tricky one because, again, if you've seen the movie Lincoln, you know that the radicals, absolutely, the radical Republicans did want full equality, the vote, everything. Lincoln wasn't a radical Republican. He was a little more measured. Did he want them to have those things? I think probably, but he also understood, practically speaking, it wasn't really possible where things were. Kind of like how he saw slavery. Until he felt like he could get it done, he wasn't going to do it. So, let's see. So, he has supported a national initiative to return them back to Africa, but I don't know that he said that publicly. I think we'll say silent on the matter. Though really late in his life, like I think John Wilkes Booth actually made up his mind he had to murder Lincoln when he heard Lincoln give a speech in support of blacks being able to vote. So Lincoln did support those things after the election. So I think we'll just stay silent. We do remember you lost your election. Perhaps this is wise, but many Republicans were hoping for more. You will have to contend with radicals who take your silence for indifference. All right. 1/4 of the Union Army is made up of immigrants. Do you have any interest in reaching out to any of these groups in particular? German immigrants have been a part of our base from the beginning. Instruct Stanton to put Franz Sigel in charge of the Army of West Virginia, which he did do. Irish. Yeah, I think we'll support that. Many 48ers have enlisted at the encouragement of local Turner clubs, and this will help your outreach with those who have gone to fight mit Sigel. And Sigel did terribly in the Shenandoah Valley. But yeah, that's totally what that was about. A faction of radical Republicans have officially split off from your caucus, spurred on by Horace Greeley's writing and Salmon Chase's machinations. They plan to nominate John C. Fremont for the presidency, calling for your removal from office. So we need to deal with this, but how do we deal with it? Get Chase in here, see if we can get him to disavow the group and damn the leak before it gets out of control. Chase firmly declares his neutrality in the upcoming dust-up, which you know is code for tacit support of Fremont. You'll likely have to strike a costly deal with him going forward to keep him in your camp. How about we make him Chief Justice? Yeah. The time for your own convention has arrived, built on support from crossover war Democrats and those Republicans who have remained on your side. The National Unity Convention, it was the National Union ticket, has yet to select a meeting place. I'm trying to remember historically where that convention was. All right, it was held in Baltimore, so that's what we're going to go with. I couldn't remember for sure. It is not lost on anyone that you picked what was once one of the largest slave markets in the Union, an appreciated metaphor for your unity ticket. The radicals, meanwhile, convene in Cleveland. You have officially been renominated for president. The National Union ticket begins the slow trudge to keep you in office. Is there a theme you feel could retain your position? Yeah, we need to win the war. That's what it is. And, of course, I allowed Fremont into this thing, so I'm not doing very well historically right now. Let's see. We need to get the radicals back in line, push our support of the 13th Amendment, and aggressive Reconstruction and Grant's plans of total war. That's not really historical, but it may be what I need to do at this point. You're certainly running an aggressively partisan campaign. While this will help keep radicals loyal, some question if your ticket is one of National Union in name only. So that did help us against Fremont. I'm trying to sway us back to the historic viewpoint as best I can. Though expecting to be renominated, Vice President Hamlin was surprised to be dropped by the convention from your ticket. In his place, Democratic Senator Andrew Johnson has been chosen for the role. Hindsight, huge mistake, but they didn't know Lincoln was going to be assassinated a month into his second term. How will you go about your political rhetoric and actions on the matter? Necessary to win over Southerners. No, we're not going to do that. reach out to him and promise to do my best to get him back into the Senate. Hamlin was unaware that this was your personal prerogative and is saddened and embittered to find out. While consoled somewhat by your assurances, he cannot find it in himself to campaign for you. So that's going to hurt us in New England, unfortunately. Grant's overland campaign has gotten off to a rocky start. So this is the campaign that leads to the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, eventually down to Cold Harbor, and then to Petersburg. What was to be a quick skirmish in the forests of Spotsylvania County in Virginia has turned into the bloodiest few days of the war. Grant insists he should continue to pursue Lee. Yes, absolutely. Drive them toward Richmond. Grant's relentless pursuit leads to the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse, which quickly turns into a slaughter, the war's costliest so far. Both sides claim victory, though Grant points to the path he has carved toward Richmond. All right, still not a lot happening here. In the South, here we go. Sherman has entered territory where telegraph lines have been cut. Messages have become rare. Do wish to force him into closer ground. Sherman trusts the man. Grant trusts the man as I do. Let him burn through Georgia like a wildfire. So I'll say we need decisive action in this theater. This is a sacrifice I'm willing to deal with. We'll go with that. Sherman appreciates your confidence and proceeds in his march southeast. News of a defeat at Kennesaw Mountain soon makes its way to you, but you maintain your confidence as Sherman approaches Atlanta. It's going to make or break things for us. Horatio Seymour is widely expected to be your Democratic opponent for president. What about McClellan? Let's see. Shore up support of our troops. Seymour's always been unpopular with Tammany Hall. We should get Seward to make some appearances throughout the state. Yeah, let's do that. Seward's from New York. He was widely expected to be the Republican nominee by a lot of people in 1860, but ends up Lincoln's Secretary of State. Seward is more than happy to sing your praise in the state he once governed. However, outside of New York, there are questions as to why you would distract your Secretary of State in a time of war. All right. We're still at 77. It's all going to be about taking Atlanta and how the war goes. Grant moves toward Richmond, has the option to choose the field of battle and lay the groundwork for taking the city. Again, we're trying to stick to historic standpoint here, so we're going to tell him to... So Mechanicsville, that's Cold Harbor, Mechanicsville. To flank Lee, cutting him off from the secessionist capital if we move quickly. Yeah, let's do that. Papers are calling it the Battle of Cold Harbor, and some 13,000 Union soldiers lie dead. Yeah, but that's historically what happened. Even in these unprecedented times, some domestic issues follow you as president. A Pacific Railway Act meant to build a transcontinental railroad has arrived on your desk. This is something he campaigned on. Let's reach out to Greeley and see if this will turn the tide on his reporting of our actions, because this is something he pushed for years. This is an issue Greeley has deep feelings for, but your gestures toward him seem suspect. The Tribune congratulates Congress for passing the bill, and you go without mention. That's okay. It's all right. Okay, we are still just now getting to the halfway point on this one. Running this war has been expensive. True. Your income tax from 2 years ago remains controversial. See, the U.S. did have temporary income taxes, like in situations like this, typically only on the really highest incomes. There wasn't a permanent income tax until there was a constitutional amendment that passed allowing for that in the 20th century. Revenue Act, lowering taxes generally, but raising them on the highest earners, as well as increasing taxes on business. Will you sign the bill? It's a wartime necessity. There's little pushback to the bill, which is appreciated by many taxpayers. This will raise some $250 million in sorely needed revenue. Again, it's not having much of an impact. The war is going to do that. Seymour has declined to seek the nomination for the Democratic Party. The likely candidate has become the young Napoleon himself, George B. McClellan, who did eventually, though he lost this election, did eventually become governor of New Jersey. And then his son, George B. McClellan Jr., was mayor of New York City. I think he was mayor when the subway opened. Let's see. If anything, this means they can't keep their own house in order. We must begin to refer to him as Seymour's seat warmer. No. I think the man has the humility of a peacock. Hopefully the voters see through his preening. Drawing attention to McClellan's ego and dramatic pronouncements may be the character issue you need to turn this race around. He certainly shares traits with Fremont in that regard. All right, cool. Looks like Illinois is finally coming home, so that's good. Despite Greeley's efforts to displace you on the Republican ticket, it is August and the New York Tribune has yet to endorse John C. Fremont for the presidency. Will you make any attempt to mend fences with Greeley's machine? Have a personal meeting with him. I know they wrote letters to each other. In fact, I think Greeley was the guy he wrote the letter to that very famously is often shared, showing Lincoln's views on slavery, which was, if I could win the war and restore the Union by freeing none of the slaves, I would do it. If I could do it by freeing all of the slaves, I would do that. And if I could do it by freeing some and leaving others in bondage, I would also do that. Let's see. Let's meet with him. Unexpectedly, you find much common ground with Greeley. While stopping short of endorsing you, the Tribune brings itself in line with your administration on a variety of issues and ceases its constant nagging. That'll help us in New York. West Virginia split from its namesake to become the 35th state. If the war were to end, would you require its reintegration into the Commonwealth? No. Yeah, we're not going to do that. West Virginia heartily agrees, Mr. President. Yeah, we're not going to lose West Virginia over something like that. Looks like Indiana and Michigan coming our way. So that's good. So it's really, we got to turn these three right here. New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Another state will soon enter the Union as a constitutional convention has begun in Nevada. I think 1864. They did, in fact, enter the Union. So this is another chance to get electoral votes. The old Whig promise for a transcontinental railroad will be just as appealing to them. In a locale relatively distant from the war, it is right to focus on issues more pertinent to the state's population. The railroad should be as winning an issue here as ever, while the massive deposits of silver have created a mining community certain to support you. Excellent. So we're up to 102 to 132 now. Great. Now, once we take Atlanta, we should be home free. Johnson was selected for his appeal in the southern border states. He is, however, eager to finish his work as military governor of Tennessee. How should we use him? I don't want that drunkard anywhere near my campaign. Yeah, that's probably fair. I will let him decide how he divides his time. He approves an effective order in the border states, and his imposition of a stringent loyalty oath in Tennessee should help keep that state under your thumb. Excellent. All right, so that worked out pretty well. Hopefully we can start. Looks like Pennsylvania is getting a little closer, so that's good. Petersburg stands as the most important outpost connecting the Confederacy's capital in Richmond to the industrial center of Atlanta. Grant claims a prolonged siege may be in order, but has an alternative plan to take the city in quick time. So Grant actually very nearly was able to swoop in and take Petersburg right out from under Lee's nose before Lee even knew what was happening. But there were some fluke things that happened that allowed Lee to get some troops there first. So I trust him to make... we're going to let him do it as he sees fit. A series of skirmishes results in Grant encircling Petersburg, a real coup which should see the city in Union hands by January. Your gamble paid off. All right, we're still not swaying these other states the way we should, though. Francis Blair, who I believe was Postmaster General, has called you to his home, the Blair House, right across the street from the White House. the aged founder of the Republican Party, an honorary cabinet member of every president since Jackson. Yeah, he was like this guy that you knew you had to have on your side, and so he was very influential and had a lot of say in speaking to the president, even though he didn't have an official position. A personal friend of Jefferson Davis, he is pleading that you attempt to vie for peace with the Confederacy, lest he tank any attempt to pass the 13th Amendment. This is the very balance that you see being dealt with in the movie Lincoln. He's sending Francis Blair, played by Hal Holbrook in the movie, and Blair's son was a corps commander in the Union Army, Francis Blair Jr. So he kind of sends him to kind of placate him on this kind of peace mission while trying to get the amendment passed. From the outset, let it be known, we will agree to no armistice that compromises national unity or the eventual goal of abolition. Under those terms, I may be amenable to a meeting with Confederate leadership. Yeah, let's do that. Blair runs your message back to Davis, who earnestly believes the two of you may find common ground on the Mexico issue. A meeting will be set up for December. In the meantime, you will have to win re-election. Confederate General Juba Early, commander of Lee's cavalry, has maneuvered around Grant's line, has troops headed straight toward Washington. And this is where you have Lew Wallace get there just in time to slow Juba Early down at the Battle of Monocacy. And a lot of people have argued that this saves Washington, though I'm not entirely sure how true that is. Washington was the most fortified city on earth at this point, but Grant had pulled a lot of the garrisons out of Washington, a lot of these heavy artillery units, and turned them into infantry in the field for his overland campaign. So, do you have any plans of evacuating the city? No, we're not going to evacuate the city. You get to watch the skirmish from Fort Stevens, which is true, that absolutely happened. As the city's defenses easily hold Early back, you may have greater instincts than many claim. All right. Oh, here we go. Grant has come to you with a plan for Petersburg. He wants to dig under Lee's defenses, the crater. And the crater probably would have been successful. This is a real precursor to World War I, right? I've got a video coming out about Hill 60 that will be coming out tomorrow, all about a lot of the mining that took place. And mining's been part of siege warfare for centuries. It wasn't new in the Civil War or in World War I. But, when you have three choices like this, that means that you could get a good outcome and you might not. The plan was a good one. The Pennsylvania miners did their job in digging the mines. The problem was at the last minute, the black troops who had been specifically trained for the operation of attacking after the crater exploded, were at the last minute replaced by white troops. Fear of backlash, fear if it goes wrong, how it's going to look, that kind of thing. Very, very poorly led division, whose commander basically was about as negligent as any commander on any battlefield in the entire American Civil War, and it was a disaster. Incredibly well portrayed, by the way, in the movie Cold Mountain. Fantastic opening scene showing the Battle of the Crater. All right. A stunning success! Oh, hey! The bomb eviscerated an entire enemy regiment instantaneously, and the resulting encirclement by Burnside will lead to the surrender of Petersburg by September. Richmond is surely the fall. We may take Richmond earlier than historic, and that may make this an easy victory. McClellan has been nominated. In his acceptance speech, McClellan has explicitly cited your treatment of him while he was leading Union forces as an example of your poor judgment. Just remind voters, no, we should not respond at all. He can caw all he likes. The facts are not on his side. This will be a winning strategy. Some disaffected copperheads might vote for McClellan, but you have a winning platform and a solid record to run on. I don't recall Lincoln ever being too harsh on McClellan in this election. George Pendleton of Ohio, I think, grandson of Nathaniel Pendleton, who was the second of Alexander Hamilton in his duel with Aaron Burr. In fact, you hear him mentioned in that song. How does it go? Nathaniel Pendleton and a doctor that he knew, he says at one point. It's Pendleton's dad, I think. Pendleton was the vice presidential nominee in 1964. You see him prominently portrayed as one of the characters in the movie Lincoln. Let them tear themselves apart. Let's begin reaching out to undecided war Democrats. Remind them who stands with their interests on the matter of the Union. Great number of war Democrats are confused by McClellan's campaign and are willing to vote for Republicans under certain conditions. This should give them the push they need. All right. The states that early on were not really strongly on our side are starting to get stronger. We've got Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont now. We just got to swing some of these big states in the middle now. All right, long way to go. 14 questions still. Fremont continues to leech votes from your campaign. Is there any way you'd like to win back some radical Republican support? We can show more support for the 13th Amendment. This should be the antidote to your woes with the radicals. Abolition is becoming increasingly popular. And listen, it just makes sense, right? Hundreds of thousands dead. People want it to be for something that is more than just restoring the Union, and the added benefit of being able to finally deal with the slavery issue, which has dominated American politics for most of its history, is certainly something that people are more and more supporting. 5 states currently permit black men the vote. Do you have any interest in cornering this demographic? See, the problem is we're already winning those votes, and we don't want to lose border states in the process. We're just going to kind of stay quiet on that. While you've won the support of many black activists during your term in office, many, including Frederick Douglass, expressed their frustration. You seem unwilling to go further. And Douglass was sometimes, and many radical Republicans were sometimes, frustrated with how slow and methodical and paced Lincoln was when dealing with these things. But Lincoln was a brilliant and very shrewd politician, and he was good at reading the way the wind was blowing on this stuff. Pendleton has begun actively campaigning in the Midwest, claiming you plan on fully enfranchising and rehabilitating blacks throughout the North. We are for freedom, not forced migration. We'll do that. This has been the party line for many years now and represents a shift from your prior stated view favoring colonization. There was Lincoln, like a lot of white Northerners, believed that black people would never really truly have equality with white people, and that it was better for everyone if they were resettled in places like Central America or in Liberia, which is why Liberia was set up in the first place. That's just how they saw things. Some good news. David Farragut has taken Mobile Bay, the largest remaining Confederate Navy yard, in a major coup for the Union Army. His son, by the way, I believe was a Medal of Honor recipient. I visited his grave in Arlington. Would you like to install a similar provisional government as you have in New Orleans and Knoxville? Alabama's still an active arena for war. Actually, you know what? We'll wait until we finally take Montgomery. This plan is in line with your previous actions. With the fall of Mobile Bay, the capture of the rest of the city and Alabama can't be far off. A telegraph has arrived from General Sherman in Georgia. By God, read it. Here it is. This is where the election is going to change completely. Atlanta is ours and fairly won. And Lincoln knew when he read that telegraph, he knew he won the election. He knew it. And let's take a look. Wow. Well, you know what? I think people have told me it sometimes takes a turn or two to see the changes from things that happen in games. So we might be another turn away from seeing those changes. Washington is a changed city. A parade has been scheduled. Many Republicans are reconsidering their bolting away from your platform. How will you seize the moment? Honestly, I think what Lincoln would do here would be, hey, we've still got a lot of work to do. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Abolition, let's see. seize this moment and reconcile the factions of our party as well as the war Democrats to be fully united until November. There are enough good feelings within the National Union camp for figures on both extremes to agree to postpone internecine squabbles until after the election. This will help you. We're still not seeing the sway that I thought we would see in these other states, though. Damned be, Horace Greeley has written to you once again, offering to endorse you for president. Thank God, it's a pleasure to have him back in the fold. I would rather focus attention on Harper's recent coverage of us. Just thank God. Many radical Republicans seem to rethink their opposition to you. The tides are indeed turning, but not in Ohio and Pennsylvania and New York yet. Oh my gosh, come on. Telegraph has arrived from Fremont. In light of the changing direction of the war, he's offered to drop out of the race and endorse you. He's demanded some concessions be made for him to do so. Offered him a military governorship. Now we can't turn on the Blairs. Can't concede too much as we need to keep operations running to maintain the war. Yeah, let's go there. While he agrees his dropping out of the race will be best for the war effort, Fremont cannot bring himself to publicly endorse you. That's fine. As long as he drops out, I don't care. Many radical Republicans begrudgingly rejoin your coalition, but their passion is tepid at best. All right, so we solidified things out west now, but yeah, I think we're in good shape. We're at 140 to 94. We've got Ohio now. Still not Pennsylvania or New York. When you put forth the Emancipation Proclamation, it was Andrew Johnson himself that asked the border states be exempt from the mandate. Remember, Emancipation Proclamation intentionally leaves out the states that are loyal to the Union because Lincoln couldn't afford to lose pro-Union but pro-slavery folks in Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, Delaware. What do you say to these worries? We can sell, let's see, we were a different field in 62. The border states were moments away from seceding. Andy Johnson had the foresight needed to keep them in the fray. His tenure, I will assure them, shall be no hindrance to our goals. Your words do little to calm the radicals, but hopefully with time they will come around. All right. I mean, we're still winning the election, but I still want to see Pennsylvania and New York come around. Grant has sent word that he can spare the whole of his cavalry to drive the Secesh out of the Shenandoah Valley. This is when he sends Phil Sheridan to go deal with things that Franz Sigel could not do. Yep, let him do it. But there's 3 different choices that say the same thing. So, catastrophe. While the rebel forces were successfully... Phil Sheridan was killed in the proceedings. His men have been routed back to Grant's defensive line. Morale throughout the Army of the Potomac has fallen to an all-time low. Okay. That did not help a lot at all. Okay. Active duty soldiers have historically not been able to vote, but they were able to vote in this election. Absolutely. Allow them to vote. The soldier vote, which Lincoln wasn't entirely sure that men in the field were going to vote for him, but they did overwhelmingly. In fact, a lot of hometown newspapers, like our hometown newspaper here, actually showed the totals among the regiments, like the 20th Ohio, which was the unit that my ancestor was in locally here. It actually, the newspaper said how many men went for Lincoln and how many men went for McClellan among men of the 20th Ohio. Stanton devised a new system guided by the states to allow soldiers to mail in their votes from the front lines. This marks the birth of the absentee ballot system and will be appreciated by many fighting for the Union. How in the world could you possibly have men fighting to preserve the Union not able to vote in their country's election? So it was a no-brainer, really. All right, we've really solidified the Midwest now. We'll just have to see if we can get these last few. All right, here we go. Despite the renewed optimism throughout the Union, the mood in New York City remains heated. As the election approaches, the Democratic bosses of the city seem to be gearing up for a similar fight that ensued after the draft. There were these draft riots. fictionalized portrayal of those shown in the movie Gangs of New York. It didn't happen quite like that. It wasn't quite that awful, though there were deaths and there were lynchings that happened. It was ugly, but it wasn't quite the way it was portrayed. Stanton has asked you to take these calls seriously. Directly coordinate with the Democratic boss to keep the day peaceful. All right, let's do that. Seems to do the trick, though the bosses do not seem to have any further interest in leaving the Democratic fold. All right. Progress in the siege of Petersburg continues at a crawl. Thought we were supposed to take this city by now. Many around you pleaded for you to consider Grant's replacement. No, absolutely not. No, we're not going to put Hancock in charge. Absolutely not. Grant has been your most successful and loyal general. With your faith in him redoubled, he guarantees the capture of Petersburg in short order and details to you his determined plan to do so. All right, election's close at hand. You can see how things are shaping up. Any region you'd like to focus in, we have to scratch out every vote we can in that state. And I think New York was Lincoln's biggest concern going into Election Day, even though he did win it. Yeah, let's do that. If you played your cards right, you should have been able to wrangle New York by now. Hopefully this last stop will put the icing on the cake. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Same with Pennsylvania, but I don't need either one of them to win. I just would like them. What are we going to focus on? End of the war. End of the war, end of the war, end of the war. Every day you get a new report from the front lines, be it from Grant or Sherman. The news is encouraging. With any luck, you should have this war finished for good by your next inauguration. Here we go. I don't think we're going to do quite as well as Lincoln did historically, but we are going to win. I will be curious to play this again, just kind of doing my own thing to see what happens, especially when it comes to some of the decisions related to the war. But we won the two states that have been kind of readmitted to the Union, Tennessee and Louisiana. Arkansas wasn't far behind on all of that. There's Massachusetts. So we've won everything so far, but the difficult ones we're still waiting on. We're only a third of the way there on our votes so far. All right, Delaware went for McClellan. Not a huge deal. Kentucky did as well. So border states, that's to be expected. And New Jersey, again, no surprise. This is pretty in line with what happened historically, I believe. I think New York will be the big shift if we don't win that. Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, West Virginia, Maryland. Excellent. There's Iowa. We did lose Pennsylvania and New York and Connecticut. So not going to be a decisive victory, but it is a victory. So there is what we did. Now let's... can we look at the original results? Is that something we can see here? All right, here's the historical results. It was 212 to 21. It was not nearly as close as a lot of people expected it to be. So we did lose about 2.5% of the popular vote compared to what McClellan did historically. So what were the differences on the map? I want to look at that. Yeah, so the differences are just the ones I mentioned, specifically New York, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, who went for McClellan instead of myself. But I pretty much won everything else to be expected. The only things McClellan won were New Jersey, Delaware, and Kentucky historically. All right, so there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Lot of fun. Like I said, the link is in the description. I have coincided the release of this video with the release of the mod. We've been talking back and forth over the weekend about how to do that. So the mod is now live. If you're not familiar how to load a mod, I can't show you how to load this specific mod because at the time I'm recording it, the mod's not there yet. I had a special code to be able to get into it. But let me go ahead real quick and show you exactly how to load a mod on this game so that you can do that on your own. So what you do is you go to New Campaign Trail, to the website, which the link's in the description. Go all the way down here to where it says Mod Loader, okay? You have to do this first. Don't click on anything else. Mod Loader, choose the mod that you want. So let's say, we want Biden in 1932. No, let's not do that. But so let's say we want the 1892 mod. So then we choose that, then we hit Submit. Now, after we do that, now we hit Begin, and now we can see there's the 1892 election. Now we can choose who our candidate's going to be. We hit Continue, choose our running mate. Of course, some of them are going to say do not use. See, in some cases, they haven't fully coded some of these choices. So we hit Continue, choose all of our choices there. Now, a lot of times when you load a mod, this first screen might show the wrong thing. Like if you notice at the beginning of this game I just played, it didn't show the right people. Just go to the map like this and then go back to the game and it should show the right people. And then you should be golden. You should be able to play the mod. Hope you guys enjoy this. Thanks so much to the developers for reaching out and giving me this opportunity to play a really exciting, in-depth 50-question mod. That was a lot of fun and a great chance to talk about the history behind the real election. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please hit the like button if you would. Please turn on those notifications, and please, 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 if you would, when you see the video about Hill 60 from the Ypres Salient go live, please click on it. I would love for as many people as possible to see that new original content, but historically my reactions get way better clicks. So I would love it, and it would mean a lot to me personally if you could support the channel by clicking on some of that original content on the homepage. Thanks for watching.